Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like-minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but 2 of my last 3 trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Amateur Traveler Podcast, Episode 64.
I got my bags packed on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. 15-hour flight, oh, I don't think I'll ever be coming home. You know I love it. Everywhere I go, I know. Everywhere I go, it's gonna be something. Everything I know, I got it from somewhere. So let me go, oh.
Welcome to the Amateur Traveler Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Today on the show, we go to Cape Town, South Africa. This episode is brought to you by HotelBook.com, the official site of independent hotels worldwide. HotelBook.com. Stay your way. Stay independent.
So let me go, oh.
That was obviously the new theme song that I mentioned on last week's show. Didn't get a lot of comments on the discussion boards about it, so that's what it sounds like in a show. I have 2 news stories for you today. The first one comes from eTurbo News, which is a travel news wire service, and it's about time poverty. According to a paper at the 8th Annual Vacation Ownership Investment Conference in Orlando, Florida, active Internet users report that their work week in America has increased their length of the workday by 1 hour. Cell phones have reduced weekends and have taken away Saturdays and nights out. Work weeks in the U.S. average over 48 hours. We have surpassed the Japanese work week since about 4 years ago. Unfortunately, today Americans work 9 weeks more than the Germans, 4 weeks more than the British, and spend the least number of days on vacation, only 13 days compared to the Italians, who enjoy 42, the French with 37, the Germans with 35, the British with 28, Canadians with 26. So we're number 1. An interesting article I saw today from the John F. Kennedy Center. From January through June of 2007, there's going to be Shakespeare in Washington to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the Folger Shakespeare Library. A number of different organizations, 40 different arts organizations around Washington and around the world, including the Royal Shakespeare Society, will come together for Shakespeare in Washington, a festival featuring a vast array of theater, music, and dance, as well as films, art exhibits, and many other events in the Kennedy Center and other venues. Links to both of those articles on the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. And now here's the interview with Glenn about Cape Town, South Africa. I'd like to welcome Glenn from the ZA Show from Cape Town, South Africa to the show today. Welcome, Glenn.
Thank you, Chris, for having me on the show. It's going to be a fantastic time telling everybody about the city that I love, about Cape Town.
So, and Glenn heard about the Amateur Traveler through Podcast 411, so thanks again to Rob for that opportunity to promote the show. So, Glenn, first of all, you're in Cape Town, South Africa, and I've been to Africa but never to South Africa. You're basically going to act as our tourist bureau for South Africa today. Why should someone come to South Africa, particularly Cape Town?
I would say particularly Cape Town because here we've got such a lot to offer for the visitors to Cape Town. There's so much to do, so much to see, and Cape Town is by far probably one of the most beautiful cities on earth, and nothing can beat the city at the foot of probably the most beautiful mountains, and that could only be Table Mountain, which is flat on the top, as the name suggests.
And let's start with time of year. When should you go to South Africa? Are there times of year you should avoid?
The tourist season starts from around September, and then because we're in the southern hemisphere, and our summer is during the December, January, February months. Of course, our spring starts around about September, and that is definitely the best time to come. It's because obviously the weather is good, although the weather is good all year round, but you get the beautiful hot summer days, virtually no rain, so your weather is guaranteed throughout the summer months. But also to add to that, there's actually no time when people can't come, because during the winter as well, it's cold, it's chilly. We get to about, during the day, probably 12 degrees centigrade.
Oh, that's not
which is not bad, and it's sunny. Yes, we do get our winter rains as well, but it's really also a very good time to come. It's not that hot, so you are not going to feel bothered by the heat, but it's really, really also nice. Because Cape Town has also got its what we call our secret season, and that's when a lot of the accommodation is cheaper as well, and it's just, I think that's during the June, July, and August times of the year.
Your secret season, okay. It's a shoulder season.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you had, say, a week to spend in Cape Town, and I tend to use that since we Americans just don't have that much vacation, and a lot of the people who listen are from there. If I had a week to spend in Cape Town, what would you do first? Well, besides be jet-lagged, because we probably flew in.
Yeah, because your typical flight, I know a lot of the American public fly from Atlanta. They fly then directly to Johannesburg or first to Cape Town. It depends what flight it is. So the jet lag, so if you're looking at about, say, a 12, 13, 14-hour flight. And then obviously from the UK, you're looking at also about a 12-hour flight. So you're going to be a little bit jet lagged, but I don't think that should be a problem, because once you land at Cape Town International Airport and you walk out the doors and you just walk into the beautiful weather and just seeing Table Mountain then far back, I think you're going to be pretty much ready to get your week started and to get things done. And just to answer your question as to what people should do during the week, first of all, it depends on the person. There's so much to do for everybody. There's people who like to do more outdoorsy stuff, climb mountains and go shark cage diving. There's people who like to do the more historical side of things, go to Robben Island to see the maximum security prison where Nelson Mandela spent virtually 18 years of his life. That is a brilliant, brilliant tour to go on. I actually went on there a few years ago. Going up Table Mountain via the Cableway, going through to Cape Point, which is the most southern tip of the Cape, not Africa, just the Cape, and also not to forget the Cape Winelands, because to be very biased here, I think South Africa produces some of the best wines in the world. Of course, I think the French would definitely say they're the best, but I think we all like to think that we're the best, but there's just so much to do, and really depends what type of person you are.
Now, since I don't want to have a 15-minute show here,
yeah.
Can you tell us more details? Let's go back through those a little slower. So let's do the outdoor activities first. So you said Table Mountain. How high is Table Mountain? When you say climb it, is that a technical climb? Is that a stroll?
It's not a stroll.
Okay.
You go up little basically rock steps as you know towards the top of the mountain, I think Table Mountain is probably like, if I'm now going to think now, about 1 kilometer high. But obviously the best way to go up Table Mountain is via the cable cart. The cableway, they've got 2 cable cars that go up and down the mountain, and you actually stand. The floor rotates, so you've got a good view of the whole Cape Peninsula and the City Bowl, the harbour, stretching for miles and miles and miles. And of course, you have to make sure you go on a good day. You get to the top of the mountain, and especially now during the summertime, where the cable car only comes down from December onwards till around about January, February. The cable car only comes down at 10 o'clock in the evening, so you can go up there,
really?
take a bottle of wine, some great South African wine with you, go and sit and watch the sunset. It is really spectacular. It's highly recommended, and there's a little restaurant up there as well, and it really makes for a good sundowner as well.
And for people who aren't waiting that long, are a lot of people then taking the cable car up and then hiking down?
Yes, that does happen. Some people who are more fitter than others would actually go both ways up and down on the mountain, but some will just take the cableway up and go walk down, or vice versa. There are a lot of hiking trails on the mountain itself. Around about 5 years ago, we did a hiking trail which took us 4 hours to get to the cableway, where you virtually go along the side of the mountain, up a gorge, and then basically along the top to get to the cableway. So there's many ways to get onto the mountain if you enjoy your hiking. There's also the Hurikwaho Trail, which is a 2-day hike, and also not to forget they're actually busy constructing the 5-day hike, which will take you from Cape Point all the way across the peninsula to the cableway, and that should be ready in about 2 years' time or so.
Okay, and the next thing you mentioned was shark diving, and I have at least one friend, Jim, who we talked about on the trip to Hawaii, who's done the shark diving before, so I know he's listening. So we've got to tell him a little more information about shark diving in South Africa here. Is it a popular activity?
It's popular. Of course, False Bay, which if you look at the map of South Africa right at the bottom, it's a huge big bay. It's really, really noticeable, which is notorious for the big great white sharks. There's a lot of sharks that swim along the coast. So they do take advantage of that, and they do take out boats to do shark cage diving, and also even further up the south coast of South Africa towards Hermanus, they also do a lot of shark cage diving there as well. And so you're definitely, hopefully, guaranteed to see some sharks as well.
Now, for those of us who are a little less adventuresome, are there opportunities to get in the water and not see sharks?
Well, of course, we are known for our very beautiful beaches. We've got very, very beautiful beaches. If you go to the beach along Blouberg Strand, Bloubergrand, you've got the beautiful view of Table Mountain. Unfortunately, the water is freezing, which is on the Atlantic Ocean. Uh-huh. And then, of course, cannot leave out Camps Bay Beach and Clifton Beach as well. Some very, very beautiful beaches. And I also must add for the guys, some very beautiful women as well.
All right. And you're saying the water on both sides of the Cape is cold, and your definition of cold is how many degrees centigrade?
I would say probably 10, 12 degrees centigrade.
That's a little cold.
Yeah. But then you go into the False Bay side of the ocean, and you go towards, if you go to the Strand, Gordons Bay area, the water is much warmer there. We look at summer, I've heard of temperatures at about 20 degrees centigrade, and that's when I myself have done my fair share of swimming when I was a kid, when I was still staying in the Strand with my parents. So, that's probably the only place where you can swim in the Cape. If you really, really want to swim in the ocean, then you'll have to head up towards KwaZulu-Natal, Durban area, to go and swim in the warm Mozambican current there.
Oh, okay. So the current is coming down the coast of Africa, and you've got currents that are coming out from the Atlantic, and therefore a lot colder.
Yeah.
It sounds like. Okay.
That's correct, yeah.
And I didn't ask where we should stay when we come there. Your house, I assume.
Unfortunately, I won't have enough room for all the mounds of people that want to come stay, but there are a lot of hotels and guest houses and B&Bs around Cape Town, so there's no shortage of accommodation at all. Of course, the hotels the main ones would be the Arabella Sheraton, the Cape Grace, the Table Bay, the Cullinan, which are the more luxurious 5-star hotels. There are a lot of boutique hotels, and of course, as I said, guest houses and B&Bs as well. So there's no shortage of accommodation, and it's right. There's a lot of them that are in the city itself, on the outskirts, on the Atlantic seaboard, Sea Point, Camps Bay, Llandudno, Hout Bay, wherever you go, there's definitely accommodation, and they are reasonable. We're looking at about say 3 to 4 to 500 rand starting, and there's a lot of them where, as if you've got more people, the lower the price. They are very reasonable, and so a lot of our visitors, tourists to South Africa, find the accommodation very reasonable as well.
And rand to the dollar, pound, or euro right now would be?
The rand to the dollar is about R7.50.
Okay.
And then the pound is about 13. Yeah, it's about 13 rand to the pound, and the euro is about 9 to 10 rand or so.
Okay.
The rand is going through a situation where it's going a bit up and down at the moment. But yeah, you can bank on about 7.50 to the US dollar.
Okay. As you started to tell us things before about South Africa, I'm trying to think of what else you listed. You listed outdoor activities, history. Let's talk about that. You mentioned a tour of the prison where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for so many years. That is close to Cape Town, then?
Yes. Of course, one of Cape Town's main tourist hotspots is the Victoria and Alfred waterfront, which is where you can do a lot of shopping and you can eat at many restaurants there. That's usually where a lot of the activity is. And it's also home to the Nelson Mandela Gateway, or the Robben Island Museum, which is where you would buy tickets and board the ferry to the island itself. The whole trip is about 3 hours. You board the ferries, and it takes you through to Robben Island. It's not a very long trip at all. And you get onto a bus, and they then show you around the island. And, of course, they take you to the prison where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned for so many years. And what is actually nice about this tour, especially the trip in the prison, is that it's the tour guide is an ex-political prisoner. So you hear the stories firsthand, and it's really fascinating to hear the stories that he does tell you. And also you do get the opportunity to walk into Nelson Mandela's cell, as well as other cells that were occupied by other political prisoners at the time.
Interesting. Other historical things in the area?
I would say other historical, of course, the Castle of Good Hope. The castle was built by Jan van Riebeeck, who was one of the first Dutch settlers to set foot on land, which is also quite a fascinating history of the colonialism of South Africa. Then I would also recommend to go and see the District 6 Museum, which is it was in the 1960s where a lot of the coloured population lived sort of on the outskirts of the city, known as District 6, and it was called that because it was the 6th municipal district at the time. And when the apartheid laws came into being, as well as the past laws, those people were evicted from that land and moved out to the townships, to the Cape Flats. And this museum is basically, you go there and that's the stories that you see, the photos of how the people lived there and what they had to go through when they were actually forced off that land. And it makes for a very interesting and historical tour.
Okay. And then nightlife in Cape Town.
There's no shortage of nightlife, indeed. If you're in the city, of course, going up Long Street, there's a lot of clubs, pubs, restaurants that you can go to. There's also, might I add, at the waterfront as well. There's a lot of place to go to there if you would like to eat out. Of course, there's no shortage of restaurants in Cape Town. We offer cuisines from Mediterranean to Vietnamese to Chinese to Italian, even African cuisine as well. You can get everything here, no matter what it is. And of course, there's a lot of, and also I'd like to mention there's a lot of clubs where you can see a lot of live bands as well. And the ones that I'd like to point out is the Independent Armchair Theatre and Observatory. There you can see some of South Africa's top bands, and of course Mercury Live and Lounge is another one of those venues as well. And then if you want the more African sound, there's a place called Mama Africa. It's also in the city, and they do a live marimba playing and other some African sounds that you'll be able to hear. So there's definitely no shortage of nightlife. And then also to add on, especially now in the summer where the sun goes down around about 8 o'clock in the evening, it's always highly recommended if you would like to just go out and have sundowners to go to Lamed in Camps Bay and meet up with all your friends. That place is packed on a Sunday evening, and you're bound to have a good time there as well.
You had mentioned the wineries. Want to tell us more about wineries? I've had some South African wine.
One thing that is a must do, if that's the right word to use, when you are in Cape Town is to visit the Cape Winelands. You get onto the N1 freeway and you drive for about 45 minutes and you take the turn off to Stellenbosch, which is the sort of the wine capital of the Cape. And there's so many wine estates to go to. There's you can go to Spier Wine Estate, where you can also see they've got cheetahs there as well. There's other estates like Kononkop, Delheim, Morgenhof, Netlingshof, Simonsig, Uitkyk, and Murati, just only but to name a few. Really fantastic. Go and do some wine tasting. A lot of them have restaurants where you can have lunch, and it really makes for a great day out. And then also, because there's over 17 different wine routes around the Western Cape, so really there's a lot of choice. And the one that I particularly enjoy is the Paarl wine route, because Paarl is also a wine town, if I can put it to you that way. And there's some really, really great estates out that way. There's Netlings, there's Niederberg, Laborie, KWV, there's Reebokskloof, there's Reitersvlei, Seidelberg, Simonsvlei, there's also Lindhorst wines, Landskroon, Fairview, the popular Fairview, which is also a goat farm where they make goat's cheese as well, which is definitely a must. Fairview is actually a very, very busy farm. You go there and it's just a lot of people. So if you go there at a good time, at a quiet time, it's really a nice place to visit.
I live near a wine region myself here in California. We are just really now starting to hear about South African wines, and obviously I heard about them more when I was in Africa, but is that something that there's a long wine tradition, or is this a relatively new thing in that area?
Very long wine tradition from as early as the 1600s, because when the early settlers that came, especially also with the arrival of the French Huguenots, they established a town. Yeah, that's where a lot of it comes from, but a lot of it's also from the Dutch as well. Because, for example, the one farm that I mentioned here, I think it was Reitersvlei.
Right.
The farm has been in the family for hundreds of years. We're talking from the 1700s here. So a lot of these farms are passed down from generation to generation, and still in the family. You hear who the owner is, and it's the owner's name, and you hear the last name as the farm's name, or there's some other family link to it. So a lot of the farms which are still in the family's names. And then just coming back to the French Huguenots, there's another area that is a definite must visit, and that is Franschhoek, which is also not far away from Paarl. I think it's about a 20-minute drive from Paarl. Franschhoek is also a long wine tradition, and also that's where the French Huguenots settled at the time. And there's also a great number of in the little town itself. It's got such a nice little small town atmosphere. There's a lot of South Africa's top restaurants are there, art galleries, and also right at the end of the road, the main road, is the French Huguenot monument as well, which people can visit, and the museum is also next door to that. So there's the Cape Winelands is just full of history, full of long winemaking tradition. It's a definite must go to.
Any other things that we should not miss when we come to South Africa, particularly Cape Town?
Okay, during this, one place that I definitely would recommend is to come and visit the Kirstenbosch National Botanical Gardens, which is where you would find over about 2,500 indigenous species of plants and so forth that are grown there, and it's also got its fair share of history as well, because there's even a hedge which Jan van Riebeck built to protect the communities from the cattle at the time. Also, just to add there, now in the summer they also host what they call the Summer Sunset Concerts. And this is an absolute must to do. They start this year. They're starting from about the 26th of November. It's on a Sunday evening, and it goes on to about the 2nd of April the next year. And each Sunday, a South African band would play it it can be any genre, from hard rock, from alternative rock to electro, fusion, jazz, classical music. I mean, we've got bands like Goldfish, Macaulay Workshop, Watershed, who's become quite well known in Europe now. The Parlotones, which have got, must add, some music on the Potsafe Music Network, which is good. Then even the Cape Town Philharmonic Orchestra, Arno Carstens, the Three Tenors, so we've got some opera there as well. So a wide variety of music. And also they've also got their New Year's concert, which Freshly Ground, which is a top South African Afro jazz fusion band playing, and also James Stewart as well. And I have to add that James Stewart is also on the Potsafe Music Network. So the caliber of the artists that are playing, I managed to get into the potosphere as well. So, and what you should do is pack a picnic basket, get some great South African wine, and go and sit on the embankment, the grass embankment, which slopes down to the amphitheater. And you would just see the view over the whole Cape Peninsula as the sun goes down with Table Mountain, eastern slopes of Table Mountain behind you, and it just makes for a fantastic Sunday evening. Depending on the band, it's always advised to come very early. For example, Watershed is going to be one of them, Arno Carstens is going to be one of them, where you would actually have to arrive around about, say, even as 10, 11 in the morning to get a good spot on the grass, because it's very, very popular. It's a lot of the Cape Townians go, and it's definite must. And the tickets are available at the Kirstenbosch ticket office as well, so there's no problems. And then also to add, before Christmas they do the Candles by Candlelight, which is also, and they do it over 4 days, which is also very nice to go to as well. I was there, I think, 2 years ago, and it's just nice to be able to get all your friends together, and you get given a candle which you light up, and you can imagine if you're lucky enough to sit down towards the stage and you turn around, you just see candles all over the place as far as your eye can see, and that definitely makes for a fantastic experience.
Anything that we're going to read about in the guidebooks that the guidebooks are going to recommend that tourists go to that you just say skip, it's not worth your time?
Really, there is no place which I cannot recommend. There's just so much that, I mean, I myself as a local Cape Townian haven't even done yet. But one thing that I have to recommend that I haven't done myself yet, and which I really need to organize, is to do a township tour. Of course, we cannot leave out that there is a poverty side to Cape Town, to South Africa in general, and this is I recommend that you go with a tour guide that will take you into the townships like Khayelitsha or Langa, and you'll be able to see how the people live there. It sort of brings you back to home. Brings you down to earth, because you see the people living in tin shacks and so forth. But also, you will then get off the tour bus, and you can go into their spaza shops and buy little beadwork items and other curios which they have made, and also visit. There's also a couple of B&Bs in the townships as well, and the communities out there are so passionate about tourism and about the tourists coming into their township that they're willing to go head over heels to make your visit a pleasant one.
And how would we get around when we're down in South Africa?
Okay, there are going to be two types of visitors to South Africa. I'm not counting people that are coming down to visit family and friends, but there are two types, and those are the people that have already got a pre-arranged itinerary with a tour operator. In other words, their transfers to and from the airport are taken care of. They would then get on a bus each day and go and tour the Cape. Then you get the self-drive tourist, and this is what I would recommend people do, is they self-drive. Our public transport infrastructure is not very good. It's not like New York where you've got a subway system and an efficient bus and cab system. We do have cabs, but the problem with cabs is they're very expensive. We're talking about 6 to 7 rand a kilometer. Now, can you imagine traveling from the airport to the city? It does, pinch quite a deep hole in your purse. And I would suggest that you hire a car. Of course, in South Africa, we drive on the left-hand side of the road, right-hand drive. So that's going to be an interesting adjustment for our Europeans and Americans and other people who drive on the other side of the road. But definitely hiring a car is highly recommended. And what's also a nice innovation, which a company here in Cape Town called Tourism Radio has brought out. And what it is, it's a device which gets fitted in the bonnet of the car, and it transmits to the radio inside the car. In other words, you tune into this device, and where you drive, it's got also a GSM and a GPS unit built in. So you drive around the city and surrounds, and it actually tells you where you are. So, for example, if you're coming into the V&A waterfront, and then it will tell you you've just entered the V&A waterfront. On your right is the Two Oceans Aquarium, where you can see all these species of fish and sharks and whatever the case is, and it tells you a little bit about the V&A waterfront. And as you drive out of the waterfront towards the Atlantic seaboard, the voice prompt comes over the sound system and says, now you're on the Atlantic seaboard. And if you drive past a particular restaurant even, it'll say you're driving past this restaurant. It's like a tour guide on its own. So everywhere you drive, and it's recommended to take this option. I think it's about 15 Rand a day. At some car hire, they would actually subsidize it for you, so you get it for nothing. It really depends who you go with. But there are about 2 or 3 car hire companies that currently do that. So it's Budget and National Alamo and Senior Car Hire that do that. But I've actually spoken to a listener who listens to the show who said that he actually took out this option when he hired a car here in Cape Town, and he was really, really happy with it. It was really informative, just on a historical level, and just tells you a little bit more about the area. And then when it's not telling you anything about the area, they're doing like South African food recipes and 20 things to know about Cape Town, or just sort of local slang, local talk, just sort of all these little programs they put on. It's really, really a really good system, and I would definitely recommend they take that option. But yeah, generally just driving around is what I would suggest the way to get around. So yeah, there we go.
Any last recommendations for us?
Another option that people also might consider doing is to take, say, a helicopter ride around the peninsula. That is also highly recommended, and you can also do that at the waterfront as well. If your dream was to fly in supersonic airplanes, like the BAE Buccaneer and the Hawk Hunter and so forth, for quite a high fee, about 28,000 Rand to about 73,000 Rand. There's a company called Thunder City, which has got the largest collection of privately owned supersonic jets. So if your dream is to fly in one of these jets, this is where you can make it come true. They're called Thunder City, and they're actually at the airport.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Glenn. Now, if you want to hear more of Glenn's voice, the ZA show, or the ZA show for those of you in the States, and you want to tell us where we can find that, Glenn?
Yeah, you can search for it on iTunes. Even if you just type South Africa in iTunes, you'll be able to find it. Or just go to my website. That's www.thezashow.com. That's THEZASHOW.com.
And you'll certainly hear more music from South Africa if you listen to the show. You can tell from Glenn's passion for the music that's coming out of South Africa these days.
Yeah, that's sure thing to come, and I'm on a big mission to try and get as many bands onto the Podsafe Music Network, so that other podcasters around the world can also play and also enjoy the music as much as I do.
Well, great. Thanks very much for being on the show, Glenn.
Thank you very much, Chris. It was fantastic to talk to you, and I hope that that some of your listeners definitely make Cape Town as the next travel destination. And if they do, please do let me know.
All right. After we finished talking, Glenn sent me an email and said one thing he forgot to mention was that if you want to put a trip to South Africa on your calendar, you might think about 2010 when the World Cup will be in Cape Town, South Africa. I'll put links to a number of South Africa and Cape Town resources on the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. And then, since the hour is late here, I'm only going to give you one other internet resource, and that's not necessarily something I'm recommending, but it is the hotel jumping headquarters. The hotel bed jumping headquarters at bedjump.com with pictures of people jumping on their hotel beds. I don't know why I'm giving you that one. I think it's because my bed is calling to me at this time. Please send me an email at host@amateurtraveler.com if you have any questions, suggestions, etc. Also post on the discussion boards at amateurtraveler.com/post. And then for you fans in Second Life, I have made a group called Amateur Travelers that you can join, and I'm hoping perhaps to have a meetup sometime when we get critical mass in that 3D virtual environment. And with that, I'll say thanks so much for listening.
Everywhere I go, I know. Everywhere I go, it's gonna be something. Everything I know, I got it from somewhere. So let me go. Oh.
So far as I know, this is the last episode that's going to be sponsored by HotelBook.com, and so I'd like to thank them very much for their support. And with that, let me just say that this episode was brought to you by HotelBook.com, which features nearly 5,000 unique and independent hotels in more than 140 countries. Whether it's a resort, a cabana, or a castle, HotelBook.com invites you to stay your way and stay independent. Visit HotelBook.com to see the latest deals for Cape Town and other parts of South Africa. From an upscale city hotel to a relaxing beach retreat, HotelBook.com will show you the best deals for that one-of-a-kind travel experience. HotelBook.com. Stay independent.
The best and the brightest, served up daily by the sharpest minds in content delivery, Podshow and Limelight.